Uncanny with the sand, clear eyes, truths and jokes, gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow. Step into the
Hello and good whatever it is to wherever you are, morning, afternoon. I guess if you're on the East Coast, it's afternoon, and if you're not on the East Coast, then it's morning. But anyway, here I am. I'm actually feeling a little bit optimistic today, which is crazy considering where things are at. But I'm feeling a little bit of optimism. Uh, not like victory, but I feel like there's hope. And I was thinking of the analogy, like the Rocky movies where he always does the rope a dope thing, and the his opponent like wears himself out just beating the crap out of him, and then he kind of like sucks it up. I ain't name's hokey, right? But he sucks it up and he starts punching back, and you're like, yeah, and then he starts turning the tide, right? And I feel like that's where we're at right now. We've been getting the crap beaten out of us. I'm not going to deny that. Democrats' approval ratings are like at an all-time low. Um, the Constitution seems to be like it's headed for the paper shredder. Stephen Miller is like yelling and ranting, and it seems like this is like his wettest of dreams. But the resistance is happening. We're fighting back. There is really something happening. Last week, like literally millions of Americans showed up to protest. When Judge Dugan got arrested, Americans in Wisconsin said, no, we're not going to stand for this. And they rose up, and there were spontaneous protests. Paramount settled with Trump in his frivolous lawsuit, even though it had no chance of winning, because he was abusing his power and they weren't going to be able to get their merger done if they didn't. And then 60 Minutes sign off exposed it, exposed their own network for being the compromised little sycophants they are. And you see the polling. Trump is underwater on the economy, on his overall approval rating, on immigration, on his handling of the terrorists. Like every single issue that he supposedly won on, he is now underwater on. And, you can be bitter, you can be angry and say, well, they should have known about that beforehand. And I feel that, right? Like I feel that too. Like I'm still upset that there were people that voted for him. But this is not the time for bitterness. This is not the time to shove people that want to join the movement away. If somebody learned, I want them to be able to join the movement. All right. And I've also seen some people that are like, there was the spontaneous gathering on Capitol Hill, and it was broadcast. And I just want to mention, like, Cory Booker is a rising star. He was already known. I'm not saying he wasn't known already, but I feel like he is ascending, and he's shown much more leadership than Chuck Schumer has, and he's been inspiring. And you can like talk about, well, I don't like his record on Israel and Gaza or whatever. But this is not the time for infighting. This is not the time for looking for perfection. Perfection is the enemy of good. This is the time for resisting, right? And so if somebody, I don't want to say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but let's just stop calling allies enemies because they don't agree with everything. Like, there is no one that agrees with everything that I think. And if I met somebody that agreed with everything I think, that person would terrify me, because I would be seriously wondering what their real, whether they had an opinion of their own. Like, nobody should agree with everything somebody else does, right? What we need to ask is not whether or not Cory Booker's stance on Gaza is perfect. It's whether or not his stance on Gaza is better than Trump's. Because though, our options right now are Trump or not Trump. All right. So, if it's not Cory Booker, and I've also seen like people trying to pit Cory Booker against AOC or Bernie Sanders or whatever. This is not the time for infighting. This is the time to join hands. This is the time that we come together and agree with one another on what we agree on and find the common sources of agreement. If you look at what happened in South Korea with their successful defense of their democracy, it was a diverse group of people that had different goals and different objectives, but what they found was common objectives and common goals, and they allied together on those things to remove the anti-democratic president and let the rest sort itself out later. Let democracy sort the rest out. Let democracy sort out Israel and Gaza. But right now, it's not a choice between one democratic solution and another democratic solution. It is a choice between democratic solutions or democratic problem solving or authoritarian problems. All right. So let's just stop fighting each other. Let's stop being negative to every Democrat. I don't care if you're like a Chuck Schumer fan, if there's any of those left, or an AOC fan. Like, find commonality, not differences. It reminds me of, like when I was a minister, there was a joke people used to tell about, because, Christians are so, like they look for reasons to disagree with each other. And so these two Christians meet on a bridge, and one of them says, "Oh, I'm a Christian. How about you?" And the other one says, "Yeah, I'm a Christian too. I'm a Baptist." And then the other guy says, "Okay, are you regular Baptist or Southern Baptist?" And the other guy says, "Oh, I'm a Southern Baptist." "Oh, me too. Are you first Southern Baptist or second Southern Baptist?" And the other guy says, "Second Southern Baptist." And so the first guy says, "I'm first Southern Baptist," and throws the other guy off the bridge. Like, that's where we're at as the Democrats right now. We're not looking for things to agree with. We're looking for things to disagree with. We need to stop that. We need to be better than that. We can't win in 2026. We can't win back the House or the Senate if we're fighting with one another. We need to be fighting with the enemy. And we need to stop acting like one another is the enemy. So, like, set aside those relatively minor differences. And I'm not saying that means that what's happening in Israel and Gaza is not important. And I was aware of what was happening and fighting for it long before the attacks on October 7th. Okay. I've been fighting for Gaza longer than a lot of the people that are claiming that their whole vote is for Gaza. If you care about Gaza, then set aside your differences, because what is worse for Gaza is Trump. And so if you really care about what's better for Gaza, then you want to prevent him from literal ethnic cleansing. All right. So, anyway, that's my preamble for this morning. We are Rocky and we are fighting back. Feel the hope. Let yourself hope. Lost. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Okay. Let's see what's going on. So I don't know if anybody can hear me. I'm trying to figure this out. I just had my my hub get all messed up. Okay, let's see if this works. Hey, I'm back and not quite better than ever. I have my hub just went fritzy for some reason, so I lost my camera and now I'm on my laptop camera, which apparently is dirty. Anyway, so I'm gonna have to do the rest of this from my laptop. You can see my background a little bit there. That is anyway. You can also see why I have the green screen back there. Anyway, sorry about the delay there. It's hopefully some people are still watching. Anyway, so I'm back, and I just want to. We're going to go ahead and look at some of the clips from this weekend and this morning that are giving me hope. I feel like there is reason to hope. So let's just start here after that very awkward moment. we'll start off with Warnock. These are clips from the event at the Capitol building
In
this
his very
weekend.
first sermon, Jesus said he came to preach good news to the poor. And so when I hear Christian folk talk so badly about immigrants, when most immigrants do not commit crimes, most immigrants do not live on the dole of our government. Most immigrants look nothing like Elon Musk. When I hear people beat up on the stranger, the Bible has a lot to say about how you treat the stranger. When I hear people attack poor people and act like it's a crime to be poor rather than to recognize that it is criminal for so many people to be poor. And they do all of this in the name of the one in whom I preach and believe every Sunday. Can I tell you something? Jesus is the biggest victim of identity theft in the United States of America.
So, for those who don't know, and if you looked into the history of immigration law, especially like in the 80s and 90s, the plaintiffs were almost always Christian churches. Like there was a point when illegal immigrants, the biggest defenders were the evangelical church. Now they're the biggest opponents. And so what happened? Donald Trump happened. Even under W, there was an attempt to try and remove, or to try and step up the deportations and whatnot. And there just wasn't, they couldn't get the backing of the party base. There was, like a lot of, well, there, those are our maids and whatever. But there was a lot of the base being Christian actually was more concerned about what the Bible said then. It was Donald Trump that turned this kind of evangelical megachurch Christian, this bastardization of what it is. And I'm not saying that the Christian church has ever been perfect or what it should be, but don't evaluate what it means to be a Christian by what these people mean when they say they're a Christian. They're mutually exclusive. So like Reverend Warnock is absolutely right. This movement has absolutely nothing to do with Jesus. And there's a verse in the Bible that, if you don't read the Bible, you might not know about. But there's a verse in the Bible where it says something like, there will be many who come to me in that day, in the last day, saying, didn't we speak in tongues and cast out demons in your name? And I will say to them, this is Jesus talking, and I will say to them, depart from me, I never knew you. There are a lot of people who claim to be Christians who are not Christians and who he will not recognize. So don't evaluate what Christianity is based on them. Evaluate what Christianity is based on him. All right, so let's go to the next one.
It doesn't feel that way anymore. We can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know that if we do all the things we think we need to do, that change will come. But as we sit here on the steps of a part of this Capitol that was built just before the Civil War, as I join with my colleagues on the floor of the House of Representatives, where they passed the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, where women got the right to vote, where the New Deal was passed, where Medicaid and Medicare were created. As we sit in the chairs where people sat when they voted to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And as we step into the shoes of not only our predecessors, but the advocates, activists, and everyday Americans in those moments who fought for that change. When you step out of the hindsight of history that views that change as inevitable, you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness then. An enslaved person in the 1850s had no reason to believe that an Emancipation Proclamation was on the horizon. Unemployed workers during the early days of the Great Depression had never heard of a New Deal. Patrons at the Stonewall Inn never knew of an America where they could live openly and authentically as themselves without violating the law. They had every reason to give up hope. They had every reason to believe that change would not come. They could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. But they persevered. They summoned their hope, they found the light, and they changed the world. And I am hopeful that if we persevere, if we summon our hope, then we will find the light and we will turn this moment into what a friend from Florida once called a slingshot moment. Where yes, we are pulled backwards, but the tension and pressure of being pulled backwards ultimately propels us to destinations that we've not yet been. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so if you don't know who that was Representative Sarah McBride, who was also the first transgender woman ever elected to the Congress, and whom has raised the ire and fear of Nancy Mace to just extreme and ridiculous levels. She's the one that Nancy Mace is afraid of peeing next to. But if you noticed, she mentioned the Stonewall Inn, among other things. But the Stonewall Inn, for those that don't know, which not everybody is going to know this, the Stonewall Inn was it was like a gay bar, and also like a lot of transgender folk went there. And this was back in like 1970, I want to say, somewhere around there. And then there was a law passed that you had to dress according to what was on your birth certificate. And this was in New York. I want to say New York. I think it was New York. Yeah, New York. Anyway, there was a law passed that you had to dress according to the gender that was on your birth certificate. Because back then they didn't call them transgender people. They called them cross-dressers. And the police would go in there and they would do these raids to bust people that weren't dressed according to their gender. And eventually they fought back, and there were some massive protests around the Stonewall Inn. And that pretty much ignited the entire LGBTQ movement. It was the lightning rod. It was what she called the slingshot moment. The moment where things were pressed too far and it released that slingshot moment. And that's a moment that we are in right now. With the assault on due process, the assault on transgender people's rights, not just rights to use the bathroom that they want, but to even exist. They're trying to legislate transgender people out of existence as though that's even possible. Do you think if you pass laws against it that there won't be transgender people? Like chromosomes are going to follow your law? And they talk about like science. Oh, the science. And it's like, you don't know the science. If you knew the science, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying. The science is not as reductive as penis or vagina. But we're in a slingshot moment. Let's be the stone. But I was really inspired by her and what she had to say there. This is Cory Booker here. There's a couple.
Nothing about what's going on right now is unprecedented. Everything is precedented. And then he started giving me a tour de force of other moral moments in America, crises that we had, from the Civil War to the Great Depression, to Nazis rallying in Madison Square Garden, filling it up, to a military general in the Depression saying we need an authoritarian takeover for our country, just a little bit until we usher through this period. He told me about Father Conklin, not just the #1 radio show in America, but the majority of Americans listened to him with his anti-Semitic screeds. He took a whole swath of American history, all of these moments where we were at a crossroads and it was a moral moment. And then he asked me what had us at those crossroads choosing the right direction. And I paused and didn't answer. He goes, well, let me tell you. It was not the person in the White House. It was not the people in Congress, the Senate or the House. Every time our country came to a moral crossroads, it was the soul of America, the conscience of the people, the action and the activism. Whether it was the Vietnam War, or the Civil Rights Movement, or the suffrage movement, or the abolitionist movement, or the labor movement, or the LGBTQ movement, every time it was the power of the people. In a moral moment, people stood up. In a moral moment, people spoke up. In a moral moment, people rose up and said, this is my country. It is we the people. We the people. We're going to stand up. We're going to stand up. We're going to stand up. We are in a moral moment now. This is that moment. This is that time. It's not the Congress. It's not the president. It's not the Supreme Court. This is our country. This is our nation. And it's time for us to let them know that the people united will never be defeated.
If that doesn't get you just a little bit, your soul must be broken. That was inspiring. Keep thinking about this notion that the experiment has failed, this grand experiment has failed. It's just being challenged again. It's been challenged throughout our history, and this is just the latest challenge. But the challenge has not been met by individuals or champions. The challenge has been met by the people. So Joe says, La Revolution. And I kind of agree. But there's a poem by Robert Frost that goes like this. It says, I support a semi-revolution. The problem with a total revolution, ask any reputable Rosicrucian, is that the same class always ends up on top. And so the notion of that poem is you imagine a wheel, right? And it goes all the way around. That's a revolution. So he's saying a semi-revolution, so that the people that are on the bottom are on top. So I think what we need is a semi-revolution. What we have right now is something that's trying to we have a government that is just everything the Trump administration does takes from the poor and gives to the rich. Literally takes from the poor and gives to the rich. Just with SpaceX, Elon Musk is getting, I think, what was it? I want to say $28 billion or $38 billion. But he's taking money from children from orphans, collecting money from Social Security because their parents died. I mean, how much more insane can you get than that, right? Orphans can't get money from Social Security that their parents paid into. But you have this immigrant who complains about immigrants getting $38 billion from the government. You know, I get that he's rich. Give me $38 billion to start my business. I could probably have a successful business too. No one in the history of the United States has gotten more money from the government than Elon Musk. So yeah, what we need is a semi-revolution. But to Cory Booker's point, we need to unite. Forget our petty differences. Even if you don't think they're petty, and I get if you don't think they're petty. Not all of them are. Like, some of these things really matter. I'm not saying Gaza doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's not important. It is. It's critical. But it's not better under Trump, and it's going to get worse. At least Kamala Harris wanted a two-state solution. You can get mad at her because she didn't condemn Joe Biden and what he was doing, but neither did Donald Trump. So what good does staying home do? At least Joe Biden tried to negotiate for peace and eventually did negotiate for a ceasefire. And you can, get into the semantics about what happened at the UN votes and stuff like that. But all of that is just, Trump is worse anyway. It's only going to get worse. So stop fighting with each other. I mean, I just posted something positive about Cory Booker today on Blue Sky, and I got people complaining about AOC not getting enough attention, or how he's still owned by AIPAC. But that was let's stop the infighting. Let's unite. Let's stand up together and worry about how to solve our inner differences later. Let's learn from South Korea. All right, let's go to the next clip. This is another Cory Booker moment.
The great Congresswoman mentioned the Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68. How did those things happen? Do you think we got here because a bunch of senators over there one day got together on the Senate floor and Strom Thurmond pulled everybody together and said, I've seen the light. Let those Negro people have the right to vote. That's not how it happened. Do you think we got suffrage in America? The right to vote for women because a bunch of men on the House floor got together and said, hey, fellas, put it in right here, okay, on the count of three. On the count of three, women get the right to vote. Ready? 1, 2, 3, wait. No, that's not how it happened. What happened first before Obergefell? And they actually decided to let people marry who they love. Did it happen at the Supreme Court first? Or did it start at Stonewall? Did it start with Harvey Milk? We've got to remember how we got here, from Selma to Seneca Falls. We are here because of the power of the people. Change does not come from Washington. It comes to Washington. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Without a demand. And so we came out here today to start with our grounding, our foundation. Below these buildings, constructed, some of it with slave labor. The bedrock of our nation is not the people who are presidents or vice presidents or senators or congresspeople. The bedrock of this nation was seen in those dark days, hiding out in barns, when black folk and white folk got together and plotted the greatest infrastructure project America has ever known, the Underground Railroad. We got here because of individual Americans, like a little girl named Ruby Bridges, that when all the forces of hate were allied against her, she still stood up and said, I deserve the right to a free public education.
There's going to come a day, 10, 20 years from now, when people read the history of what is happening today. And the heroes of that moment, of this moment, are not going to be Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. And they're probably not even going to be Cory Booker or Barack Obama. They're going to be the resistance movement. They're going to be the nameless, faceless millions who stood up and said, no, you can't take away our due process rights. No, we're not going to villainize people who are transgender or gay. Or we're not going to deny the history that Black Americans have impacted this country with, because you want to use DEI as a racist bludgeon. We're not going to do that. It's we who are the heroes of the moment. You want to look at who needs to act right now? You want to look at who needs to do enough? You want to look at who needs to fight? Look in the mirror. It's each one of us individually that compose the millions that will defeat Donald Trump and his fascism. That's the way it's always worked. How many people can you name from the Underground Railroad? How many people can you name from, the protests that brought us the civil rights movement, the Civil Rights Act? There's a handful of names, but most of the people we have, they're just people, just ordinary people that went to work each day, ate their ham sandwich for lunch, went to home at night, spent time with their kids. The fight, the real fight, is with us. That's the real voices. It's the millions of individual voices that say enough. So resist Trump, not one another. Fight Trump, not one another. Fight the fascism, not the democracy. Like I said, democracy can have its turn. And we can talk about Gaza, and we can talk about, what kind of health care we should pass. We can talk about those things once we own the government again. Once the fascism is gone, we can fight. We can debate those things, and we can have those conversations like adults. But sitting there, staying home, and just, looking for perfection, looking for the perfect candidate, all that does is concede power to Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and the like, and Peter Thiel. Like, let's learn from our own recent history. There's a reason that Donald Trump has a 6-3 Supreme Court. And it's not that the Republicans won the debate, or won the argument, or won the consensus. Even when you talk about 25% approval rating among Democrats, it is not that the other 75% agree with the other side, or that the 25% don't agree that their 25% is because people don't agree with what the Democrats are doing. There's too many people that don't agree with what the Democrats aren't doing. They aren't doing enough, or they are yielding to the Republicans. So let's come together and defeat Trump, and then have honest conversations with one another about how we can make things better. Because I'm not under some illusion that things don't need to get better. I've been at this for, my entire adult life, even before that. My first political awareness came in the 1980 election. I was in 5th grade. I think I was in 5th grade. What was I? Something like that. And I was a nerd. I'll admit it. I read way too much, and I read the newspaper like every day. And one day, my teacher, what was it? I would have been 13, so like 6th or 7th grade. And the teacher asks, "Who wants Trump to win, and who wants Carter to win, and who wants Reagan to win?" And this one girl raised her hand and says, "I want Reagan to win." And the teacher says, "Why?" And she says, "Oh, because my dad says that Carter has beady eyes," whatever that was supposed to mean. I raised my hand. And she says, "Who do you want to win?" And I said, "Carter." And she says, "Why?" And so I started itemizing a list of reasons. And she was just kind of like sitting there with her mouth agape. But that's my political history, right? In '84, I was 17. I was a senior in high school, wasn't old enough to vote, but I wasn't too young to campaign for Mondale. I voted for my first time for the caucus in '88, and was just devastated by the whole Willie Horton thing. I was in the Air Force at the time. So I wasn't able to campaign for him. In '92, I campaigned for Clinton, and that was the first time that I actually got to vote for somebody who won. It was amazing to me that, like, my guy won. It was such a euphoric feeling. And I didn't realize it at the time, but we still have not had a first-term Republican win the popular vote since Bush in '88. Yes, Trump technically won the popular vote, and Bush won the majority of the vote back in 2004. But that was their second term. If they had both lost the first time, then there wouldn't have been a second term. So, like, we have the majority of the consensus of the opinion of people. Like, more people agree with the Democratic platform than the Republican platform. But for various reasons, from media representation to media bias that's misrepresented as liberal when it's actually conservative, to the whole protect, like the whole system being set to protect the minority so much that it actually is anti-democratic, and it wasn't really set to protect the minority. It was set to protect slavery. And I know that Republicans get really pugnacious if you mention that, but it's true. It was not, like majority versus minority then. It was slave states versus free states. And the whole Electoral College was designed to protect slavery. Even the Senate was designed to protect slavery. If you're a Republican living in Montana, you have more voting power than a Democrat living in California. And so all people are not created equal. At least they don't get to vote equal. And that's anti-democratic. I'm sorry. If that offends you, imagine how much it offends me that it's true. Why should that be? Why should some Americans' votes count more than others? But anyway, that's why you have where we are right now. So we are already challenged. We are already up against a bigger challenge than the Republicans are. So we do not benefit ourselves by fighting with one another. So just stop fighting with one another, please. Please stop fighting with one another. As Cory Booker just said, stand up. Let's join together and fight together. This is not the time to look for perfection. All right, and so here, this is.
I want to start with the economic numbers that we're seeing in our new poll out this morning. They're pretty brutal. 64% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of inflation. 65% disapprove of his handling of tariffs. 61% disapprove of his overall handling of the economy. On immigration, a majority of Americans, 53%, disapprove as well.
So this is, to me, this is encouraging because it shows these are, first of all, these are the things he won on, right? Allegedly. I mean, if you look at voting polls, right? They're the reasons he won. These are the things he pulled the best on. These are, according to exit polls, these are the reasons he won. And now he is like severely underwater on these things. And, to some degree, I blame the media for not letting people know what tariffs were. I will never get over the idea that people were Googling what are tariffs like the day after the election. They the media should have been saying, people are voting for, saying that Trump is better for the economy, but because of inflation, but you need to understand tariffs are going to make prices go up because that's how tariffs work. Instead, they just say, but Trump says that other countries play for tariffs. And, Joe asked a really pertinent question right now. How low can his approval go? And that's the thing, is a lot lower. And especially now that you see the tide starting to turn even against his voters, which is, and even now we're getting into some of these numbers, 35%. That's starting to carve into his base. His base has never gone below 38, 39% before. Now we're getting to the 35% numbers. that means even his base is starting to realize it. And the reason his base is starting to realize it is they're going to the store and they're seeing the prices going up. And they're seeing, you have some people, some stores are even saying that, they're putting on the receipt that this price jump, like you spent $10 on this, $1 is for tariffs, or you spent $100 on this, $10 is for tariffs. So they don't get blamed for jacking up the prices, right? So people are starting to realize this is not a hypothetical discussion about tariffs. This is money out of their own pockets. And even his own voters that, were all enthusiastic about voting for him to solve inflation. If you vote for him to solve inflation, and then you go to the store and you buy things that cost 10% more money, you're not excited about, oh, he's really doing wonderful things for inflation. You're wondering, I thought he was going to solve inflation. Joe points out there's pre-tariff commercials, right? And you also see like the shipping yards, like the bins are half full, or like the shipping containers are only half full. Like, we haven't even really felt the full impact of the tariffs yet. That's coming, and when that comes, we will see how low his approval ratings can go, because just the beginning of it, just the tip of it, is already turning even his own base against him. And that's why we need to unite with each other, because that means there's real hope that we can flip the House. And there's even hope that we can flip the Senate. Obviously, we can't do anything about the White House in 2026, but we sure can do something about the House of Representatives and the Senate. And if we get both of those, then we have a check on him for once. Right now, everybody's saying, what can the Democrats need to do this. And there are some procedural things they could do to hold him up. And I think they might be starting to do some of those things. But it's limited. Like, you can't, just this budget that is going to destroy just millions of Americans. The Senate has a certain voting rule that, like when it comes to things like budgets, you can't filibuster those. They just need to pass on a simple majority. And to be fair, that's how the Democrats passed some of their stuff when they had a 50-50 Senate. So this is not something new. But he's not getting anything through, any of his fascist agenda through, if we win back the House and the Senate. And it would be great if some people in the Senate that were Republicans actually sprouted a spine and, fought against some of the fascism that's going on. But we can give up on that, And as far as that goes, I just keep thinking of Lindsey Graham after he voted, or I remember he had his drunken rant on January 6th, and he condemned Trump, and then he was in the airport after that, and the MAGA people went and yelled at him, and after that he has been cowing to everything Trump has to say. Those few voters yelling at him just terrified him into submission. And now you have something on the other side happening, right? Where, like, you look at Chuck Grassley and his town hall. I think there's been a couple of town halls now, like 2 that I've seen, where his own voters, this is Iowa. We're not talking about a liberal beachhead here, that we're going and saying, like due process matters. Where are you at on this? So hopefully there like there might be some point where their fear of getting primaried because Trump came out against them is not there anymore, because their fear of getting primaried could come from their support for Trump rather than their opposition to Trump. Like if there's and that's why so many of them right now, they won't even hold town halls, or they're like Marjorie Taylor Greene, where she only takes screened questions and then tasers people that disagree with her, even if it's just having a sign. So yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here's Bonehead.
And other countries have to make a deal. And if they don't make a deal, we'll set the deal. Because we're the ones that set the deal. Scott and Howard and myself and others, we're going to be setting the deal. And it'll be a fair deal for everybody. And it'll be, I think it's a process that's going to go pretty quickly. We've spoken to many, many countries. And we're getting their views on things. There are a lot of things. They have VAT taxes. They have everything you can have. Don't forget, as an example, the European Union was set up to take advantage of the United States. That's why it was set. And they've done that, but they're not doing that anymore. Yeah.
Mr. President, will you prevent?
Does anybody have any idea what he just said? Well, they're going to make a deal and we're going to make a deal, but we have a deal to make with them if they make the deal, but we need to make the deal first, but they've already made 200 deals with us. And the EU is bad. And we're the victims. Like, what in the ever-living name of nonsensical ramblings was all of that about? Okay, from what I understand, you have 200 deals already made, according to you, even though we don't have 200 tariffs to make on countries to make deals with. And the last time I checked, there was only like 190 countries in the world. So are we like making 2 deals with some of these countries? But we're on the verge of making deals. But you can't say what any of these countries are, and you don't have any deals to actually talk about, but where it's just like, this is just typical Trump not saying anything and the media acting like he said something or answered a question. It was like, it's like a game show. Let's make a deal. But we haven't made a deal. Where's the deal? There isn't a single deal to be made. You keep talking about how many deals you've made, but you haven't actually made any deals. I haven't seen a deal. And I feel like, that's part of it. Like part of the reason I'm feeling more optimistic is every day we go with this kind of nonsense, with him talking about how he's made deals that he hasn't made, we are one day closer to MAGA realizing that he is full of crap. And you can say that's just being optimistic, but you see it in the polls. He's taking a hit, even in his own base, 35%. 35%. I don't recall seeing 35% in any polls in his entire first term. Or even after January 6th, I think we were, that might have been the lowest he's gotten. And we haven't felt the impact yet. So it's going to get worse for him. And you see people rising up on the streets, you see the fight growing, and you see his support diminishing. So there's hope. Don't give up on the American experiment, and don't fight with one another. This is the time we can band together and win something. Okay. Oh, this won't help him. This is Secretary Boiled Ham here.
Mr. Homan, how close are you to housing migrants at U.S. DoD facilities like Fort Bliss in Texas?
Well, we're already housing at Guantanamo. Fort Bliss is being ramped up, so in the very near future. I don't have a timetable because things need to be done, construction needs to be done. We're making sure the facilities are ready to accept. We're making facilities are able to care for the people. They're going to be detained, so I don't know the timeline right now. It changes every day because of various issues, but we're working on it.
Are you intending to hold families there, including families with American citizen children?
Family residential centers are for families. They're not jails, they're open-air campers built for families, which means they have child psychologists, they have pediatricians. And why family residential centers? Because we want to make sure that child is with a parent. Unlike the last amendment.
Are people allowed to leave? You are detaining people who are American citizens who have committed no crimes, and you are holding them in detention centers. Well, one man's detention center is a concentration camp. You can sit there and you can gloss over that by saying, we'll have counselors. Yeah, you will. Sure, whatever. They can't leave. And these counselors, you know, whatever, they're probably going to be ICE agents. You're detaining entire families in concentration camps.
Administration who stopped DNA testing, who many investigations of children being smuggled in the country with some.
This is like this big myth that they like to stoke, is that people are coming across the border with kids that they say are their children that aren't their really children because they're actually smuggling children in. This is just hyperbole and part of the whole smear to make every illegal immigrant, you know, what every undocumented migrant like some sort of human trafficker. They really, really like to make everybody look like a human trafficker and a pedophile, even though they're the ones practicing human trafficking, and Donald Trump literally is a pedophile.
That wasn't related to him claiming to be a parent. So we want to make sure children are with parents. We're going to make sure that's actually a family and that child ain't being trafficked. That's the main reason.
Such total crap. You're putting them in concentration camps so that you can make sure that they're a family. What is that even supposed to mean? But anyway, I think once you start putting people in concentration camps, you're not going to win new support by doing that. Everything they're doing is actually costing them the very little support they have left. I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, his approval numbers are in the 20s. Like, I have to believe that even MAGA, even some of the MAGA are going to draw the line at putting children in concentration camps. American citizen children in concentration camps. Sadly, it won't be everyone, but I know some of them will say, okay, that's enough. That's too much.
We'll go to the back row in the middle, to the blonde. Yes. Hello.
President Trump has said that Secretary.
We'll go to the back row, to the blonde, says the blonde. Like, why can't you learn their names? What a goodness gracious, if a man said that.
Texas will get it together. Does he think that Texas doesn't have it together right now?
Look, the president has made his position on Secretary Hegseth quite clear. He absolutely has confidence in the secretary's ability to lead the Pentagon. It's why he nominated him for this position. It's why the Senate voted to confirm him in this position. And look at the success that DoD has had thus far. Their successful operation against the Houthi terrorists in the Middle East. You look at the recruitment and retention levels for all branches of our armed forces are on the incline. line, which is exactly what this president intended to do. Secretary Hegseth has completely wiped out DEI from the Pentagon as well. And so he's going to remain focused on standing up for our war fighters, on implementing President Trump's peace through strength foreign policy agenda abroad, and the president supports him in his role.
Okay, first of all, wiping out DEI is not some great victory. If we're talking about merit-based hires, Peter Hegseth, are you telling me that you could not, if you scoured the entire nation, could not find somebody that has more merit to run the Department of Defense than Peter Kegsbreath, and he is the champion of merit hires, then you drink as much as he does? That is such a ridiculous statement, especially after you just called on the blonde. But aside from that, military, recruitment, the recruitment was already on the rise, in large part because Joe Biden's DEI initiatives were successful. DEI is so misrepresented by the right. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, diversity. This is in some ways an oversimplification, but diversity is in recruiting, not hiring. Equity is in pay, and inclusion is in promotions. Okay, so diversity in recruiting means you look and you say, oh, look, we have 95% of pilots are white males. Maybe we need to start looking at beyond white males because we don't have enough pilots. And so you go to HBCUs and you recruit pilots. It doesn't mean that they are less qualified or that they have less merit. It means you started fishing in a larger pond. And if you go fish in larger ponds, you get bigger fish. DEI is not contrary to merit. DEI means merit. Jackie Robinson was a DEI hire. Bill Russell was a DEI hire. Jim Brown was a DEI hire. Once you started reaching out to Black people that could prove themselves in various sports, they did. They had a chance to prove their merit. It does not mean that before that, Black people did not have the merit. You don't think that there were athletes in the Negro Leagues that could have been in the major leagues? There certainly were. So stop with this DEI bad thing. What they're saying is DEI means we need to write the accomplishments of Black people out of our history. And we need to, tell me that Secretary Scott was in any way had less merit than Peter Hegseth. Tell me one advantage Pete Hegseth has over Secretary Scott, the Black guy that was Secretary of Defense before him, that was always called a DEI hire. A lot of people call Hegseth a DUI hire, which, would be funny if it weren't true. But in case you missed it, there's a story that came out, that you may have missed, because I don't think it was promoted a lot in American media. But the Germans caught a Russian spy that had Peter Hegseth's private number, which makes you wonder, did Hegseth give it to him, or did he get it from somewhere else? And how much other national security information has Hegseth shared on those signal chats, and how much of it does Russia have? Like they never address the actual very fair criticisms of Hegseth. And they just, oh well, we carried out this attack on successfully, as though that had something to do with him. And so he planned it himself and told them what to do. He was probably passed out on a rug after drinking a fifth of Jack. He did not, it is not, they were able to carry out these attacks because he's Secretary of Defense. They carried out these attacks literally in spite of the fact that he was Secretary of Defense. It would not have been successful if his phone were hacked and they knew that the attacks were coming and when and where they were going to happen. They got lucky that he didn't ruin it. He did not effectuate it. He just didn't ruin it. They are so dishonest. They are so dishonest. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is funny.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Holman, talking about the border wall, can you give us an update as far as how many miles are being built today? And is Mexico paying for it, as the president said they were going to?
Well, first of all, I'll answer that question because I already answered it in my opening remarks. To date, since January 1st, there's been more than 85 miles of new border wall construction in various stages of that construction.
Okay, 85 miles in various stages of that construction. All right, so hold on to that thought.
And planning. The president.
And planning. Okay, and planning. So are these concepts of plans, or there's no indication that anything has actually happened physically in terms of building, right?
Has made it clear to Congress that we want to see more funding for not just border wall construction, but also to support our ICE agents and our Border Patrol.
You had funding for ICE agents and Border Patrol in the bill that Trump told them to vote against.
Agents who are on the ground facilitating with this mass deportation effort.
So he's clear that Mexico is not going to pay for it? Is that what he's...
So then he says, so Mexico's not going to pay for it. That's the question, right? And so now this is the most boiled ham answer that you could possibly imagine.
Let's address that. Trump said Mexico will pay for the wall. They have in a roundabout way, have they not?
No, they have not. They have not in any way paid for the wall.
Putting 10,000 military on the northern and southern border, taking the action.
So this is after Biden negotiated for 20,000 military at the border. Trump negotiated that down to 10,000, and somehow the fact they're there means they're paying for the wall. So listen to this.
They did remain in Mexico. They didn't have to do that. They're doing it. Putting military on the southern border. Have moved illegal immigration to a record low.
So these things have removed immigration to a record low, when, isn't true. But if your argument is all of these things have, made this great impact, why do we still need a wall? If what Mexico is doing is bringing immigration to an all-time record low, as you just said, why do we need a wall? Why are we wasting money on a wall? If, effectively they're doing it, then why do we need the wall? Why are we wasting money on a wall? Why am I having to work 2 more years of my life before I can get Social Security to pay for a wall that we don't need because Mexico is paying for it by putting their military on the border?
We're saving millions of dollars every
How are we saving money if we still build the wall?
day on detention, transportation, removal proceedings. We've more than made up for the cost of that wall, because the action.
But then why do we need the wall? Why do we need it? Come on, tell me. Why won't anybody in the media that is sitting there in that press poll say, then why do we need the wall? If all of this stuff is working so great, why do we need the wall?
To Mexico. So is Mexico helping build that wall? Yeah, because we're saving so much.
No, Mexico is not helping build the wall because it's not the wall, you boiled ham.
Money, millions of dollars a day. that we can afford to build that wall. So actually, yes, they're
Or we could afford to, like, not cut my Social Security benefits.
build a wall.
John Helper.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Mr. Holman.
Anyway, doesn't he look like a can of boiled ham? Is it just me, or like every time I see him, I just think boiled ham? Okay. And the last clip of the day is a little. I'm going to get a
After
little
the president's
football.
Truth Social post, the Browns finally took Shadur Sanders. Does the president think he deserves credit for Sanders getting picked? And does he think going to the Browns is better than being undrafted?
Hey, all I will say is the president put out a statement, and a few rounds later he was drafted. So I think the facts speak for themselves on that one, Peter. We'll go to the back row in the middle, to the blonde. Yeah.
So if you want to be realistic, a few rounds later, there's 32 NFL teams. He was drafted 3 rounds later. So like about 100 people got drafted after the president said that weren't Sanders. All right. So I don't think that you can say that the Browns drafted him because the moron did a Truth Social post. And just, like, let my football fandom come out a little bit here. Deion Sanders went around and told teams, if you draft him, he just won't play for you. And it's, to my knowledge, the Browns were actually one of those teams. And so what happens? You got 32 teams, right? And about half of those teams, at least, already have either their quarterback of the present or their quarterback of the future. They're not looking to draft a quarterback. Then half of the remaining teams are not looking for addressing the quarterback situation in the draft because they're like competitive enough that they don't want to develop like a rookie quarterback, because that takes a few years. So they're ready to compete right now and they're a quarterback away. So they're going to address it during free agency. So there might be 7-8 teams that actually are looking for a quarterback. And a couple of them drafted different quarterbacks. So they're not going to draft Sanders in addition. And so now you've got, like maybe like a handful of teams that are actually looking to draft a quarterback in the first couple of rounds, draft their quarterback of the future. And then Deion Sanders, not his kid, is saying he's not going to play for you because they're really bad teams. But because they're really bad teams is why they are looking for a quarterback of the future. The really good teams, like the Kansas City Chiefs, are not looking for a quarterback. And even like the Chicago Bears, who just drafted their quarterback of the future last year, and he started to show some promise at the end of the season, they're not looking to draft a quarterback. Most teams aren't looking for a quarterback of the future. And when you tell the few that are that he's not going to play for them, what happens is those teams pass over him because they don't want to. If you're a really bad team, you don't want to waste your first round draft pick on somebody that's not going to play for you. So I think probably what happened is after he got passed over for 4 rounds, Deion Sanders said, okay, he'll play for you. Or either that or it became worth the risk, right? Like you can risk a 5th round pick, but you're not going to risk a 1st round pick. So I think the Browns probably got a pretty good deal out of it. I think Sanders might be a good quarterback. But the rest of that is, I think they're also a bit concerned when you have a guy that's doing that, that's saying he's not, I'm not going to let him play for you. He's also going to be using his authority. He's going to try and inject himself into team decisions. He's going to try and force his son to be the starting quarterback from day one, and so on and so forth. And he's going to try and make coaching decisions. It is, like a lot of teams just look at that and I think that Sanders fell so far because of what his dad did. I do not think he was drafted eventually because of what Trump did. I think it's just stupid. But I think there is this mentality that MAGA has that everything that happens has to revolve around Trump. This had nothing whatsoever to do with Trump. The Cleveland Browns are not drafting players based on Trump's Truth Social posts. It's just such a ridiculous thing. But this reverence, this revering, this deifying of Donald Trump is just so insane that this is the way MAGA thinks. So anyway, just wanted to address that, even though it's, you know, no, his name is, what is it? It's an unusual name, like Jamal Sanders or something. He's a decent prospect. I'm not, you know, he could be a very good player. He's definitely got a lot of talent, but that doesn't mean that, you know, he's worth the baggage that comes with it, and the baggage is his dad. If you're an NBA fan, I think it's kind of like Lonzo Ball, where it's just the dad tends to try to push too much, and that can make the player less attractive than they would be if the dad would just shut up. But yeah, you know, the idea of Bernie Sanders as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, that would definitely be interesting. So all right. That's the show for today. Sorry for the brief interruption and the weird thing that happened with the camera if you were here at the beginning, but strong finish, right? So anyway, let's band together. Remember, perfection is the enemy of good. So I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully I'll get this whole situation with my hub resolved by then. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching.